Hi everyone, I'm Autistic Ange. This is a podcast for adults who recently found out they're autistic and are looking for understanding and other people like them. I'm not a doctor or a therapist. I'm just sharing my own experiences and perspectives as I work my way through life with a more informed lens of who I am. Maybe others will be able to relate. So, who am I? My name is Angela, but I prefer Ange. I'm 39, married and blessed with no kids, and I recently figured out I'm autistic. And I have 4 cats. Of course I do. I'm a self-identified autistic, which I'll go more into next time, but when I found out and finally felt like I belong, I instantly felt alive, if that makes sense. I've been in the military, I was a chemical dependency counselor, and now I work from home as a copy editor, which I'm so grateful for. Very random career choices, I know. I'm a very private person, so I can't even believe I'm starting a podcast. You should also know that I have a potty mouth, so if swearing offends you, please don't listen. It's really as simple as that. Also, just giving you a heads up that I sometimes struggle with verbal communication, which I'll get into in another episode, but I have difficulty explaining things. I don't even know how to explain to you why I have difficulty explaining things. And there's a good chance that episode won't even make any sense, but I'll worry about that later. Let's see, it's September now, so 4 months ago, I think, about a week before my 39th birthday, I found out that I'm autistic. A few months prior to that, I had thoughts in the back of my mind now and again wondering if I might be autistic. Long story short, my wife and I were having major issues to the point of considering divorce. We're all good now and in a much better place, but I'll get into that as well in another episode because I don't want to go off on tangents if I can help it. Anyway, our communication issues were the worst they'd ever been. I somehow got it into my head that I might be autistic. I don't know if it was because Hannah Gadsby shared that she's autistic and I related to a lot of what she wrote in her book, or if I read an article onto autism. I don't know. But looking back, how odd that I had these thoughts and didn't do anything about them sooner. So basically, I was having frequent meltdowns, taking things out on my wife, and crying by myself for hours every night. And this has been going on since January of this year. Most of my sadness and frustration was because I was constantly thinking, what's wrong with me? Why am I acting like this? And months went by without figuring it out. Therapy probably would have helped. I was going for a few years, but when the pandemic started, I stopped. I didn't want a Zoom option either because I prefer in-person sessions. But I did start going back a few months ago. Finally, seemingly out of nowhere, I decided it'd be a good idea to find a book about autism, research. It was important that I didn't just get some shitty books, so I read reviews on Amazon and went with a book by Dr. Luke Bearden called Autism in Adults. This dude's not autistic, but he's a doctor who has years of experience working with autistic people, and he wanted to explain that there are a lot of misperceptions about autism. I got like a chapter in and was like, and then another chapter, what? And then, oh fuck no. I finished it in one sitting and it was like at the same time, holy shit, I finally feel like I belong and this can't be happening. So I cried for like 2 minutes or maybe 2 hours because I was as ignorant and uninformed as many people are about what autism really is. I thought I'd been handed a death sentence, if I'm honest. I reread the book the next day because I remembered enough from the day before through my initial shock that I knew, rationally, autism is nothing at all like I thought. But the best part of this was when everything just made sense, like my whole life just made sense. How I struggled as a kid and continue to struggle well into adulthood, why I need to plan everything out, why I'm obsessed with routine and order. There was some confusion for me the first month, like, how did I get this far in life without knowing this about myself? But after that first month, I started taking off the mask here and there just to see what would happen. Best feeling ever. As I masked less, I realized that I'm very autistic and decided to stop caring about a lot of the stupid shit I cared about. For example, I don't get uptight about my appearance before I leave the house anymore. I don't feel bad about needing help with things. I don't have to do things I don't want to do. It was permission to be myself no matter what. Not to mention, as I'm pushing 40, I've just gotten tired of keeping that mask on for the benefit of other people. Plus, it just requires so much more energy to hide who I am. This might sound strange, but I am so happy and grateful to be autistic. I've never felt like I belonged anywhere. There was just this persistent feeling of feeling like I didn't fit in, even with my own family. So when I found out I'm autistic, it was an immediate paradigm shift. I immediately felt like I belonged. Even with the confusion and stuff that followed, I just knew I'd found that missing piece. I knew there had to be people out there like me, and I wanted to find them. So what followed was the research rabbit hole most of you are probably very familiar with. I read the books, listened to the audiobooks, found podcasts, articles, etc., and still doing those things, actually. I want to know everything there is to know about autism. So this is currently one of my special interests because I'm learning as I go. I found a few awesome podcasts, but I really had to go looking, I kept coming across podcasts done by therapists about autism who sounded like they knew very little about it. The ones I found were perpetuating the shitty myths and stigmas, but I was able to find a few by autistic people themselves, and it was like I was listening to myself. I was like, holy fucking shit, I'm not alone. There were very specific things these people talked about that echoed my own thoughts and beliefs, and that I'd never heard come out of anybody else's mouth ever. For example, I've always thought that celebrating birthdays, including my own, was ridiculous. I did not have anything to do with being here. I didn't climb out of my mother's cooch. She had to push real hard for hours. So shouldn't we be celebrating the people who wrecked their bodies and snatches instead of ourselves? Sounds weird, but I'd never ever come across anyone who had the exact same thoughts or even agreed with me on this until I heard somebody on a podcast say this exact same thing. I was like, other people are out there like me? Like they think like me? It's completely life-changing. Hopefully you understand what I mean. Let's see, I've always been an outcast, whether it was in school or work. I've never met anyone who thinks the way I do, sees the world the way I do. So to hear these people being vulnerable and sharing in the hopes that others will relate and learn to accept themselves was life-changing for me, and it still is. So my wife suggested that I do a podcast so there are people like me out there talking about what autism really is, given how difficult it was for me to find decent podcasts. So yeah, I'm doing the same thing, but who knows? Maybe I'll be the first autistic person someone hears from that they'll be able to relate to. We're given such a bad rap, and there's so much misunderstanding that I want to be another voice in the mix coming at you and those who want to learn with real life experiences. I think what I'll do is not have a set schedule for episodes. I'll aim for at least once a week. The length of the episodes will vary, but we'll be on the shorter side probably. Sorry about that. I know this one's short, but it's just an intro, so that's fine. I'm not like a fan of people who are random because I like to have a schedule and know what to expect with everything. But I also know that with life and adulting, it isn't realistic for me to keep to a schedule for this podcast. Plus, I'm as private a person as you can imagine. I don't do social media, I don't hang out with a bunch of people, and I definitely filter what I'm willing to share with someone. The only person I don't do that with is my wife because, duh. Although I have been masking around her for about a decade, but in my defense, I didn't know I was doing it. I still shared stuff with her. So sharing is not easy for me, but I'm hoping to get better at it. Anyway, I think that's all I've got for now. Again, this is just a short intro about me and my intent for this podcast. My email's in the episode description if you want to reach out with questions or whatever. I'm very interested in hearing about the moment you realized you're autistic and what happened after that. Like, how'd you find out? How'd you feel? Did your life immediately make sense? Oh, and I guess I should mention that this podcast is for people who were either diagnosed or self-identified as autistic as adults. No offense to the sticky jam hand kids, but there's a bunch of shit out there for autistic kids and not even half of that for adults. So this is for us grown-ups. This was just me recording into an app on my phone, hoping people find me and listen and relate, and maybe have a similar experience to what I had when I heard myself on someone else's podcast. So thanks for listening. Okay, bye.